Welcome back to the Shuffle Squad. Zach Lesage here. Today we're going to be covering over the top 10 best decks in November. Now, our Stellar Crown format has been out for a while. We've seen a lot of major events, online events, and we're getting pretty close to a definitive list depending on the metagame. There's been a few decks change between last week and this week, so a little bit of movement, but if you're heading to any of the regionals heading on this weekend, or locals or anything else like that, be sure to check out this video. The lists are available in the pinned comment below in the comment section, so be sure to copy and paste any of the lists that you want right into PTCG Live. That being said, let us know your guesses for the top 10 best decks in the comments, or just let us a comment knowing that you like the video or not. That being said, let's jump into our number 10 pick. Kicking things off at number 10 in our list is going to be Lost Zone Box. We're still using Michael Davidson's list from when he had that finalist position at the regional championships, and I really think that Lost Zone Box is just going to be one of our remaining top 10 decks for the rest of the format. We've seen this number 10 spot flip between Goldango, Cloth, and I feel like Lost Zone Box really solves a lot of the issues for the format, hence the reason why it came second at that regionals. Now, it is an incredibly difficult deck to play because you got to manage your resources from your Lost Zone to be able to utilize cards like Sableye, Cramorant, and Mirage Gate. So having an expert knowledge of every single matchup is really a must. But if you want to give this deck a try, like I said, all the lists are available in the pinned comments. And you can always pick up any of these cards that you need from our sponsor at Kayfabe Cards. They have a large selection of cards, and with Surging Sparks coming up, I'm sure you could pick up some of those cards there as well. Additionally, you can get any of the code cards you need to craft these cards on PTCG Live by checking out ptcgostore.com and using code TSS5 for a discount on any of those code cards that you want. Open the packs, get some credits, and craft whatever you want with those credits. Lost Zone Box has always been a cool deck to me. I've played to a handful of tournaments, seen success. I mean, I even won a League Cup this year with Lost Zone Box, so I love to see it back in the top 10. But what's going to be our number 9 deck? If you haven't already put your best guesses in the comments below, let us know and give this video a like at the same time. Our number 9 pick is going to be Banette EX featuring Gardevoir EX. I've seen a lot of players see success with League Cups with this deck. This deck's had some deep-ish runs at regionals as well, and I fully expect this deck to continue to see success. A lot of Polish players have been playing this deck. It's a very popular deck in that region, and considering the regional championships this weekend is in Poland, I think we might see Banette really have that strong finish, or we might see the opposite, where players locally to that region might try to counter Banette. So maybe we're going to see a push of Iron Thorns or any of those kinds of styles of decks. But as of right now, I think Banette being able to lock item cards and lock your opponent out of games can be incredibly powerful. And some decks just can't really deal with this Banette. I could shut off any deck that wants to play Rare Candy. So just hitting those right matchups, Banette can go incredibly far. I think it's really one of those decks where you have that deep run, or you might flop because you hit those unfortunate matchups along the way. So if you're really looking for a spicy deck to bring, I think Banette really has a chance to shine for these last few tournaments in our Stellar Crown format before we switch to Surging Sparks, and at that point we'll have to reevaluate where the metagame is at. But we do have Banette at number 9. I think it's a sick deck. At number 8, we have Dragapult EX with Dust Noir. I'm still really liking this build from Nicholas Galaz. I played against him at the Lima Special event. Super great player, top tier accomplishments, and I think his Dragapult EX deck with Dust Noir just does it slightly better. I liked his inclusion of Mela in that deck, so I think it's one of those things where the deck is just powerful, has a lot of options, and I mean, Phantom Dive plus Dust Noir is, you can knock out whatever you want. So like any of the decks that play Dust Noir, you have those options for those huge middle of the game multi-prize card turns, and Phantom Dive really opens up a world of possibilities. I think this deck's a little bit back down because some other decks have been able to adapt their playstyle to it. We see some other decks that are adding Mist Energy. We see decks that are just able to beat Dragapult closer to the top, so that's what's holding it back a little bit. But I wouldn't be surprised to see someone take Dragapult all the way at the regionals. It's really like this list is getting pretty close to, I think any of these decks can really win the event. I think we're about like, and if anyone's like, yo, where's this deck? I mean, I think that we're probably in a format where the top 20 decks are all viable enough. Like, would I want to necessarily like pull up to the regionals playing Cloth? Personally, no. But I do think that there's more than enough capable pilots that if they hit the right matchups, they could have a lot of success. So really keep that in mind when it comes down to it. I also have my own personal Metafy group where I cover all of my decks and I update them pretty regularly. So if you want to see the full kind of top 20, you can check in the description for my Metafy. I have my group in there. Let's see what we got going on at number 7. At number 7, we have Palkia V-Star with Greninja EX and Dust Noir. So we see another one of these Dust Noir decks really seeing success in our format. Stefan Ivanov, arguably the most successful player with this style of deck. I might have put this one spot too low. I think this deck might be number 6. So I might have got that mixed up a little bit. Like I went in and I was like, after I put my top 10 list in on how I'm going to record it, I was like, you want to know what? I probably could have replaced 6 and 7 this week. Needless to say, it's getting pretty close as our format has been pretty well figured out. And if you like a deck like this, I didn't play a deck like this. It's an incredibly skill-based deck of monitoring a lot of extra damage. We have the Origin Form Palkia V-Star to pump up energies onto a Froakie or a Radiant Greninja, or be an attacker with Subspace Swell, giving yourself a lot of options there. Again, I think this list is really good. I think that this archetype is really good. Any deck that plays Dust Noir is going to be incredibly difficult to play because you're really trying to figure out how do I pop these Dust Noirs without offering up my opponent too much, which Pokemon do I hit into, and it's not as easy as take 2 prize cards with Palkia V-Star, take 2 prize cards with Dust Noir, take 2 prize cards with Blood Moon, as sometimes it looks like for other players. So as we explore this metagame a little bit more, I think Palkia is going to be one of the decks that stays to the end. But let's see what deck we got going on at number 6. Here's the deck that I was debating putting at number 7, and I ended up putting up at number 6. Probably my own personal bias, and I'm willing to call myself out. Terapagos, a deck that I've been playing for a while. You might notice a lot of the lists on this, a lot of the decks on this week's kind of version of the top 10 decks, the lists haven't really changed that much. I don't think there's been that much movement because I don't recall there being a major event this past weekend. I could be like just gapping on the event, but arguably I think that Terapagos EX, one of the better decks in format. A lot of people aren't playing it. Maybe for whatever reason, it doesn't necessarily have the best Regidrago matchup, but it does hold its own against a lot of other top decks. So in the right metagame, if you hit Raging Bolt and you hit some Lugia and you hit some Control, Terapagos is incredibly good. So as we shape up the metagame towards Latin American International Championships, this deck might be on the rise. We'll have to see how it does for Poland this weekend, and then the following weekend in Buenos Aires, but we'll have to see. Really the biggest thing about this list is I have a Lost Vacuum to deal with all of the Bravery charms that are in Raging Bolt decks right now, and that's really all there is. I'm still a sucker for adding Jet Energy into this deck, so I'm looking for an opportunity, but the next most cuttable spot is probably the Manaphy in the list right now. I'll have to see how it plays out as the metagame continues to grow, but let's see what deck we got going on at number 5. At number 5, we have Snorlax, and we have the Rotomless build of Snorlax. Sander played this towards the regionals that we've just had, and I think that it's one of those things where Snorlax might have not been as solved as we thought it was, because boxed order is really cool. We see all these different tech cards like Worker, Grusha, Choi, just cards that I typically didn't have in the deck before. Really being able to lock your opponent with either block or with safeguard or with the cornerstone Ogre Pawn. Sometimes decks just don't have answers to this, and since there's no Rotom, really the logic behind not playing Rotom is you're offering less prize cards to your opponents, and your opponent might struggle enough to knock out Mimikyu and Cornerstone that with the extra turns that you have, you might put your opponent in a locking position. So a deck like this, I think it's incredibly cool. It's still very new to the metagame, yet it's familiar because it's Snorlax. So I think decks like this are, they have the chance to really shoot high, and we see that it's creeping up the list at number 5. I wouldn't be surprised we saw a bunch of Snorlax at the top tables because it's one of the more interesting new decks that can compete with the best decks, but still familiar to many. Here we have it, Charizard EX at number 4. It's continuously seeing success. It's pretty well positioned in this format across the board, which is one of the reasons how it's kind of crept back into the top 4. And reasonably, I think that Sebastian Lashmit's list is just arguably one of the best ways to be playing this deck right now. It's just an incredibly powerful deck from Louisville Regionals, and I don't really see too many other changes. I think all the little tech cards like Mist Energy, and I like the Cleffa, I like the Dusknoir line. I've talked a lot about the Dusknoir. We've seen Charizard see success throughout the things. So I think we're really like kind of in a format where I want to generally talk about, like, again, pick a deck out of these decks that you kind of gravitate towards. Sure, some decks might get countered a little bit more at times. Like, there's only so much that we're going to allow like a deck like Lugia to win before we start countering it. But reasonably, I think Charizard is, like, if you're a Charizard fan, there's no reason not to be playing Charizard. Like, if you've been grinding the deck at home, practicing it, don't let the one deck that you lost to at a league challenge really get you down or anything else like that. So I think this is just, we're getting pretty close to some perfect builds here. You can see that's why some things aren't changing. So we're about to enter into the top 3. Let's see what decks are kind of ruling the format. I think, like, I've talked about, like, kind of the levels within the top 10. Like, really, like, that kind of 4 to 8 spot is, like, pretty, like, solid of decks. The top 3, I think, are taking it to another level. So if you're really trying to pick between any deck and you're really like, hey, which deck should I go? I'd pick out any of the deck out of the top 3. Obviously, the decks towards the top are going to be closer, but they've been really running this format for a while. So let's jump into that. At number 3, we have Raging Bolts. Now, Raging Bolts, it won Louisville Regionals. It's seen a lot of success at other events, and I think we're getting pretty close to that definitive build. Xander Perot and Caleb Gettimer and a few others decided to go up on their Bravery Charm count. At first, I wasn't necessarily a fan, and now I've realized how impactful it can be in the metagame. So as this deck is advanced, I think that that's going to be incredibly strong. If you don't like the Bravery Charms, I wouldn't necessarily mess around with just like 1 or 2. I think it's 0 or playing 3 to 4. So you either want to go with a high count or a no count, in my opinion. And then I think Slitherwing is fantastic because there's so many Pokemon that you could actually knock out with that second attack, giving yourself a useful single prize card Pokemon to maybe offset the prize trade with your opponents. Builds like this are going to look very similar. You might see that one last spot for like Ultra Ball being changed to a third Pokemon catcher, trekking shoes, something else. But right now, I think this is kind of the build that I'd be going with if I was playing at Raging Bolt this weekend. Coming in at our number 2 spot is going to be James Cox's list for Regidrago V-Star. I think that the list is just honestly pretty close to perfect. The only card that I might want to see is Hawlucha, but that's just because I really like Hawlucha in this deck. I think when we come to other decks and other formats where there's more 70 HP Pokemon that you want to go for that turn 2 Dragapult attack against, I think that Hawlucha is a fine cut when it comes down to it. When it comes to a kind of understood 60 for this deck, I think they've done an incredible job of kind of cutting out a lot of the not 100% useful cards, and we're at, like, it's pretty close to a perfect 60 as possible. I continuously look at this deck and I'm like, you want to know what? There's really not much that I'd change. I think you have answers for every single matchup, and while I have featured a build in the past that had Noivern and Scoop Up Cyclone, do I think that there's a chance that I'd change anything else when it comes to this deck? I think I'd probably be playing this one, and I come back to that point, I'm like, maybe I could just play this one better. I did play Regidrago at Worlds, and I mean, I lost my win in the top 8, so I've always been a huge fan for Regidrago V-Star. Hopefully, maybe I'll play this deck again in the future. It's a deck that always keeps calling me unfinished business, you know what I'm saying? But we're about to be at our number 1 deck. If you haven't already given this video a like, give this video a like, double check to see if you've subscribed to the channel. If you haven't, hit that subscribe button. If you have subscribed already, tell your friend about the channel. All that really does help us grow. And put your best guess for the number 1 deck of the week in the comments below. Let's jump into our number 1 pick. For our number 1 deck of the week, we have Lugia V-Star as just the best. It's the most winningest deck when it comes to regionals right now, where it's featured the most in day 2. It advances the most in a day 2, and has a pretty decent matchup spread with not too much lightning stuff around. The list that we have right now is Kieran Ferris from Toronto. He's had an incredible season. so far, making that top cut at Baltimore, top cut at Louisville, and all around a fantastic player. So this is a build, like I think there's a few other players like Yurko and Rahul and a handful of other players who have seen a lot of success with Lugia this season. As much as they're all fantastic players and they all have fantastic lists, this is a list that I like seeing the most on paper. I think it's just like, I like the 2/2 Chinchino, whereas I think for other builds, there's that Raikou and the Lightning Energies, where those are cool too, and they definitely have their purpose. They just haven't necessarily worked as well for me, but feel free to check out whatever Lugia list you like. But for right now, this is the list that we got. Again, all the lists are available in the pinned comment, in the comment section. And also you can get any of these cards that you want from Kayfabe Cards, or you can get the code cards to build these decks online at ptcgostore.com. Appreciate everyone tuning in for this week. Let me close things out. And there we have it. Another week with Lugia on top. Lugia has been the top performing deck at regional championships, and I really don't see too much of that changing right now. Maybe we'll see decks like Iron Thorns jump back into the metagame, or we're going to see some other decks kind of try to tackle Lugia. But Lugia's been so successful for so long, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it make yet another deep run at this event. Are you going to be playing any events this weekend? Let us know. We'd love to catch up with every single one of the people who watch our channel. Channel's been growing awesome lately, so we appreciate all of the love and support. And if you're trying to up your game, feel free to hit me up for some coaching sessions on my Metafy, metafy.gg/@ZachLassage. The link is available in the description. I'll catch up with all y'all later. Thanks so much for watching. Peace out and have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.